Good afternoon, and thank you to TSBDC and BGT Recruiting and the Chamber for inviting me to come and speak to you today. I have an important announcement before we get started. I have a button. Did anyone lose a button on your coat? Look down. It was lying over there, so button, okay? I hope you've got a great lunch. I know when I came a few weeks ago, I had to Instagram. It was the largest Rice Krispie square in existence. It was as big as my head. It was thrilling to have that kind of dessert. So I hope you're enjoying your lunch. Oh, and let me just give a shout out to my lovely assistant, Mac Bauer, who will be periscoping us today. So turn around and wave for the camera. This is all going to be live streamed on Periscope and Twitter. And today we're going to talk about digital storytelling, okay, and how to create compelling online branded content. But first, let's talk about what social media pioneer Trey Peddington described as the threefold human hunger: to be seen, heard, and understood. And I've adopted that as my positioning line for Spica Communications. People long to be acknowledged, and it's this desire for acknowledgement and connection that's as old as humankind, but it's amplified in the digital era. And it's, brands that get that concept can use it to build community and cultivate advocates. It's more than being responsive and engaging, timely and transparent. It's all that, but it's more. You as a brand convey status on the individuals with whom you interact on your digital platforms, because the world is watching. Seen, heard, understood. So what I have today are really 10 strategies for creating compelling digital content and telling your story online. And, I didn't want that to go away. The first tenet is to unleash the awesome power of archetypes. All right, so archetypes are essential elements of any story, digital or otherwise. They're literary symbols and images that reoccur throughout the course of human history. Every storyline has a hero, a villain, and a victim, maybe an anti-hero. You can think back to Greek mythology, you can think of superhero movies now, Star Wars. Every storyline has archetypes, and those are the basic archetypes. And there are specific archetypes within those broad categories, and they vary among different cultures and societies. For instance, in America, we value individualism. So the pioneer, the explorer, the cowboy, these are archetypes that we find to be positive. That's not necessarily true in other cultures. So who's the iconic cowboy in advertising? I know some of the old-timers here will remember. John Wayne, but what about the brand? Marlboro Man, right? So, even years after that ad ceased to run, people had absolute and total recall because that was such an iconic archetype. So, when we talk about storytelling, particularly digital storytelling, think about archetypes. Basic female archetypes are the queen, mother, wise woman, and lover. Or I've heard it said another way, Madonna, whore, and crone. So they aren't as flattering, but there are also archetypes that are gender neutral. The rebel, that can be male or female. And another strong female one is the she-warrior. When you think about the Hunger Games franchise and a lot of pop culture icons, Madonna has her rebel tour. I mean, that's so there are icons out there, and there are ways to play that. So keep it in mind, particularly in crisis communications, what archetypes tell your brand story? Is your brand male or female? And I don't mean are you marketing to males or females. I mean your brand characteristics. And, what storyline best resonates with your consumers? Because once you get this right, everything else kind of falls into place. So the second strategy for effective digital storytelling is to leverage user-generated content. So speaking of archetypes, here we have the plucky princess and her handsome prince. But Kate and Will are totally modern royals, right? They're not old school. They're accessible. They're down to earth. They are non-traditional archetypes. And here they are participating in the ubiquitous time-honored pastime of creating a selfie. The Pope does it. President Obama does it, right? Everybody snaps selfies and shares them. So remember again, what's our threefold human hunger? Come on, it's going to be interactive. Seen, heard, understood. Thank you, Claudette. She was a student of mine at UT, so she knows that if y'all don't answer, I'll start calling you out. So So anyway, people crave authentic connection with each other and with your brand. So leverage that craving for connection with photo and video contests on Facebook and Instagram. Invite your consumers to comment on your blog. Post amateur videos on your YouTube channel. Let your fans be the stars of your brand story. Okay, it's an easy thing to do, and as I think Laura Higdon and I were talking before the presentation, sometimes it's very hard to come up with all the content and to generate it internally. Well, give yourself a break. Invite your fan base, invite your consumers, invite your social media community to help create content along with you. And there's great skepticism toward advertising, right? That's always been true, but even more so now. No one believes what you say about your brand, but people listen to each other and to influencers in their categories, whether it's YouTube and Vine stars, online gamers, Kardashians, So invite user-generated content and cultivate relationships with content creators to benefit your brand. Oh, and then there's Peyton. How about those Broncos, right? Did I hear that? Yeah. So creating a cohesive narrative is another element of digital storytelling. And Peyton, what can you say? He's a brand unto himself. Talk about an archetype, an icon. He's a hero overcoming adversity and overcoming his own human frailty to triumph. But the point I want to make here is that good storytelling necessitates a cohesive narrative. Peyton has always been true to his brand. He's never wavered in the image he presents to the public. His actions back up his words. So be like Peyton. Weave together a cohesive narrative over time across digital platforms, in person, in your philanthropic endeavors, in your every touch point. That's compelling content. It's digital gold, because think about it, Peyton doesn't have any Michael Phelps, bong shots on social media. He doesn't have any, Ray Rice elevator videos. Peyton Manning doesn't even have a Twitter, so there's no risk of a Twitter rant from this guy. He is a master communicator on and off the field, and his brand narrative is seamless, all right? So the next principle in digital storytelling is to speak in a consistent brand voice. Define your brand persona and then embrace it. So Mark Zuckerberg is the geeky genius in a hoodie, the accidental billionaire. Ellen DeGeneres is a lifestyle and media mogul and activist in Chuck Taylor's. Think of Taco Bell, Old Spice, Budweiser. These brands all have distinctive voices that are consistently executed across digital and traditional platforms. So this may not be your brand persona, but I like cats, and so you need to see a few of those. Be culturally relevant. Diversity and inclusiveness are culturally relevant. Even mainstream brands like Cheerios are willing to risk adverse reactions to make a deeper emotional connection with their consumers. There was a backlash over a Cheerios commercial that featured a mixed-race family, and Cheerios fans actually created a Tumblr that highlighted positive, authentic views of mixed-race families. Wow, to have that kind of brand advocacy, to have those brand evangelists in your community who come to your defense and rally and put out authentic user-generated content that supports your narrative. That's amazing. And then think about last summer when the Supreme Court ruled on same-sex marriage. Brands jumped on the bandwagon, posting videos, memes, and snaps supporting equal rights. There were rainbows everywhere, right? And here the culturally relevant reference is about the kidnapped schoolgirls in Nigeria. And this image is less about branding than it is about the power of social media to affect change. These are all influential women using their personal celebrity to advocate for a culturally relevant cause. Brands have to walk a fine line, really, between cultural relevancy and hijacking current events for their own benefit. So if you can tap into the collective consciousness and do it right, your brand story takes flight. If you err on the side of seeming like you're trying to capitalize on something that's going on, whether it's a cause or an event or even just a pop culture moment, then it can cut both ways. So it has to be done just the right way. Since we're coming up on Super Bowl season, I still remember Oreo's iconic "You Can Dunk in the Dark," that they put out during the blackout, and that's a perfect example of being culturally relevant in a lighthearted way. It wasn't about a serious political cause or agenda, but it was, seamlessly done and perfectly on time and on spot. And, you know, a brand, if I can call it a brand, Humans of New York does it right. The stories and images are authentic, and they always strike just the right chord. Although there's been some noise recently about the efficacy of HONY's recent efforts to highlight the plight of Syrian refugees. But this is digital storytelling at its finest, across social platforms using text and video and photography to create intimate portraits of everyday people. With over 8 million followers on social media, a vibrant blog, and now a New York Times best-selling book, Humans of New York is the epitome of digital storytelling. In particular, it's visual storytelling at its best. Does everyone follow Humans of New York on one platform or another, right? Yeah, I mean, it's something we all want to emulate. And it was a photographer who I won't say he stumbled across this, but he had a personal vision of wanting to chronicle the everyday people of New York, and it exploded from there. So I think it's an example of, you know, again, being authentic and creating a consistent narrative. He certainly has a brand voice that's established, so we can certainly learn from what basically an amateur pulled off very, very successfully. Now, I want to shift gears here and talk about some client work and some local brands that you all might be familiar with to illustrate some of the other principles of effective digital storytelling. So another tenet is to go multimedia. And I have a shout out to a couple of my colleagues here from Fletcher Marketing PR. PetSafe is a client of Fletcher's, and I was able to collaborate with Fletcher to work on a digital gift guide over the holidays. The Naughty or Nice Pet Present Guide was launched with a multimedia news release, or MNR for short, which included videos, photos, and a digital flip book, as well as hyperlinks to PetSafe's e-commerce site. It was a mini campaign that told a seasonal story in a digital format in keeping with PetSafe's brand voice, using multimedia. And the other thing that's nice about these multimedia releases is they don't just drop to the media, they live online. So, you know, as a brand, you can repurpose those. You can post them to your website. You can share them via social. They're wonderful in driving search. But it's just a great example, again, of multimedia components being used effectively for digital storytelling. And then the other thing you want to do is create a cross-channel presence. Geezer Stories is a concept that I've recently launched with a blog, an Instagram, and Twitter feed. The idea came from my personal Facebook posts that I make about caring for my elderly parents. And the posts seem to resonate with people of my generation who are facing similar circumstances. So the idea is to create a cross-channel presence for a book launch about the care and feeding of old people. So this is relatively new. We'll see how it goes. Check it out and let me know your thoughts. GeezerStories.com. In PRSA, we call that a shameless plug. Another principle for effective digital storytelling is pay to play. That's the reality now. This is another client of mine, the Lucas Center Plastic Surgery, and basically we're working to establish Dr. Lucas as a thought leader in his field. His particular expertise is in fat grafting and working with post-bariatric surgery patients. This is a screenshot of a blog post. It was actually focused on men in plastic surgery, which is a growing field, and we're promoting it to increase awareness. So you can see, you know, the campaign's still running, but the organic impressions versus the sponsored impressions. As you know, on Facebook, organic reach is virtually non-existent, and that's been intentional. You know, kudos to Mark Zuckerberg for being able to monetize his platform by changing the algorithm. So it's an intentional strategy that other social media sites are doing as well. You can't hope to just put out organic content and have it be seen. In fact, sometimes it will be suppressed to force you to pay for coverage. So remember that you'll need to allocate some spend against your digital content if you want your story to be told. No matter how good your story is, you need to give it a little oomph, a little boost to get it out there. And everyone can tell those Cinderella stories about the video that went viral organically. That's fine, you know, and we can talk about the startup in the garage that, you know, you became a billionaire. But, you know, odds are, you know, that's not going to happen for you. So why not be smart and put a little money behind the wonderful content that you bothered to create? Embrace purpose-driven marketing. This is another client of mine, Team Health, and they do a brilliant job with digital storytelling all year long, but something they do over the holidays is their Joy of Giving campaign, and this is basically a call for the public to vote to select a charity, and they will nominate like 3 different charities to receive a $10,000 holiday donation. And needless to say, it goes viral every year because the charities pick it up to promote to their constituents to drive the online voting. And then Team Health gets to bask in the afterglow of being seen as a good corporate citizen and Every year, a local nonprofit gets $10,000 through this purpose-driven marketing campaign. So it truly is a win-win. So think about, we used to call it cause marketing. I like the term purpose-driven marketing better. You need to align with a cause that works with your brand narrative, that supports your story, that fits. Again, I'll go back to something at Fletcher. Who is the shoe company? Yuki's, well, not Yuki's, but the one that we were going to do the dress shoes.
Oh, Dress for Success.
Dress for Success, yeah. There's a women's shoe line that Fletcher works with, and we came up with an idea that they could partner with Dress for Success and donate shoes because they're dress shoes, so that people interviewing and who couldn't afford to dress to go to the interviews, So it was tightly aligned and made perfect sense with the brand. So you don't just go out and do a, ice bucket challenge if that's not really aligned with your brand and your story and your narrative. So let's review for a moment. We've got 10 strategies for digital storytelling. Use archetypes in your story, all right? So they'll resonate with your audience, classic archetypes. If you think about fairy tales, if you think about mythology, folklore, everything has to do with archetypes. Leverage UGC, user-generated content. Don't think you have to create all your own content. And remember, people want to be seen, heard, and understood. They want to see their content in social, and they respect what their friends say more than what you say about your brand. Create a cohesive narrative. Again, be like Peyton. Whatever you do on the field, you're doing it off the field. If you're doing some messaging in social, you want to do that messaging also in your brick and mortar presence, your signage, everything. Don't confuse your audience. I remember the old adage about the blind man and the elephant, and one blind man fills the trunk, and so he says this animal is like it's long and thin and swingy, and someone else feels the tusk, and they said no, this animal is sharp, and someone else feels the elephant's leg. No, this animal is like a tree. And one blind man lays his cheek on the elephant's broadside and said, no, this animal is like a wall. Well, you don't want that fragmented approach to your brand, right? I mean, there can be nuances, and the messaging can be tailored for the different digital platform, but you want everyone to understand, if you're an elephant, that you're an elephant. Be culturally relevant. Oh, did I say speak in a consistent voice? I got carried away with my elephant analogy. Speak in a consistent voice, be culturally relevant and authentic, use multimedia, right? Develop a cross-channel presence, okay? Something else about that, if you don't have the resources to be everywhere, don't be everywhere. I know I've had some colleagues tell me, wow, I'm just overwhelmed thinking about trying to maintain all the social nets that are out there. Well, you don't have to. Maybe for your brand, a Facebook and a blog are what you need, or maybe you need, a Twitter feed and your website. If your audience skews young, maybe you want to go more into Snapchat and Instagram and some of the newer channels, but don't try to be all things to all people, because you'll never pull it off well. You can't do it unless you're a huge brand with lots of resources. So it's better to go narrow and deep than shallow and wide. And pay to play. You've got to allocate money to support the content that you create. Don't just put it out there and expect it to be picked up. It's like flying a kite without a wind. I mean, you've got to add a little breeze, so it'll take flight. And embrace purpose-driven marketing, really now more than ever. And studies show, I know a lot of people in here are millennials, and everyone's maybe tired of hearing about millennials, but kudos to that generation for caring about companies that are socially conscious and that do things the right way, that are green, that are involved in human rights. And so find a cause that aligns with your brand and use that to tell your story. Now, the common thread in here is the importance of visual content, right? We've all heard the stats. On Twitter, tweets with images receive 18% more clicks, 89% more favorites, 150% more retweets. Facebook brand posts with photos account for 87% of total Facebook page interactions worldwide. The top 5 most effective tactics in B2B marketing: in-person events, webinars and webcasts, videos, blogs, and case studies, all rely heavily on visual content. At this rate, we'll soon be speaking exclusively in emojis, right? Which is kind of what I do in text, but, I beg to differ. I say, because words have power, all right? I still believe that well-chosen, authentic, relevant words are the best way to set your strategy, frame your narrative, and tell your story. So I want to leave you with some thoughts from marketing consultant Fiona McAnina. For all the popularity of video, we are still words people at heart, because we are still people who are moved by ideas. Sharing pictures is easy, but a few well-chosen words can conjure up vivid images, strong emotions, or a powerful shared understanding. People who can sum things up, who put their finger on something, are influential in a way that a cute picture is not. Chosen well, words have the power to make sense of the world and to move it. Marketers are the people who must represent both the intention of the business toward its marketplace and the needs of the market back to the business. Even in this video age, words are our best tool if we choose them with care. So that's kind of a down and dirty overview, and what I really want to do is spend a lot of time on Q&A and find out what's working for you and what's not, and see if we can come up with some solutions and answers, and maybe cupcakes and kittens, because I like them. So I'd love to kind of open up the floor and take your questions and hear from you guys and what you're doing with digital storytelling and how you're creating a cohesive narrative for your brands. So, questions, comments, thoughts?
I'll dive in.
Dive in.
Okay.
Wait, and tell us who you are and what you do.
My name is Danica. I'm the design and marketing coordinator for Functional Cafes. You guys, have you heard of us? We're headquartered in Knoxville. We handle national contract therapy services for rehabilitation for the elderly. So I'm definitely going to look into the user stories later.
Oh, good. Yeah.
So my company, we started a charity internally called the Cookie Jar Fund, which is really cool. So employees have the option of basically donating maybe 50 cents, $1, like you can set the amounts from your paycheck and it goes into this fund. And if anything happens to, any of our thousands of employees during the year, like say they get in a wreck or there's a fire or something like that, that goes to our people, or you can nominate people that you know as well. So my question is, I feel like that falls under the purpose-driven charity, but do you feel like it would also be useful to align ourselves with an existing charity as well?
That's a really good question, Danica, and I want to hear what some of you guys think about that, but I'll give you my 2 cents. I think sometimes there's too much alignment with existing charities, and not to take away from their need for contributions, because they're great causes out there, but if it's a very prominent charity, your brand gets lost in the shuffle, right? So I think if there's a way for you to create your own purpose-driven marketing campaign like you have done with the Cookie Jar Fund, I think that's brilliant and genius, and you own it, and no one else does, that's preferable. Now, that being said, then you don't get the added boost of those charities helping promote, your effort. So, but I say kudos to you. You've got something that aligns with your brand, and it's internal, and you own it. What does anybody else say?
So I'd say market that,
Yeah.
have stories on social about that paying off the individuals, little videos on them getting whatever it is that they need at the time of need, and then just really leveraging your own thing.
I think so too.
Inviting people into that as well, because
The user-generated content thing.
you tell the story, and then you can be like, this is what we're doing. And it sounds like you guys are like a pretty service-heavy organization anyway, so I would imagine there'd be people out there that would want to contribute to you all.
And a lot of times you can get some good earned media coverage for something like that. Apart from the pay-to-play, there's earned, owned, shared media, and earned media, getting stories and coverage for something that you're doing that's wonderful. That's an option. I mean, have you contacted the local media to tell them about this? I would do that. And when you said Cookie Jar, I could immediately get a great visual image. So you're set up for the visual narrative, whether like what Dave said, whether it's videos or even just, do you have a little brand, a little sub-logo for that?
Yes, we have a logo,
excellent.
we have a website, all that stuff.
I'm excited.
So I guess it's just a matter of getting the word out.
Yeah.
And I think there's a call to action that feels less braggy, because then you're not, look what we're doing, feel free to participate in this.
That's a great nuance. You're right, because you don't want to be seen to be, tooting your own horn too much. But if you're inviting other people to be part of it, yeah. What do you do? Who are you?
My name is Tyler.
Hi, Tyler.
I'm a creative consultant for some small businesses. And one of our representing today is called Nerds. And we're a membership-based tech support company. So people pay a monthly membership fee, and then they kind of get access to are a team of nerds, and we help them solve a manner of tech problems that may arise in life.
I'm sure there's quite a market for that.
There is.
Yeah.
There is.
So are you doing anything in particular that fits with some of our directives here in terms of cohesive narrative, archetypes? How do you market your services?
Well, yeah, I'm also a musician, and I have a band, and something that you were saying made me think, I like your comment about how it's better to go deep than go wide, and I think sometimes less can be more, especially people my generation. I mean, anyone's online, you're just inundated with noise, and, you know, Facebook specifically, like if you're putting out stuff that's not getting interacted with, then you'll get less interaction. But in general, like if your brain is just pumping out stuff that's just kind of blah, people aren't going to pay attention. So, I mean, I think an effective, you know, post once a week or even once a month can do a lot more for a brand than, you know, feeling the pressure to do something every single day, especially if there's, you know, quality behind it.
Yeah.
That was just a thought that I had.
That's absolutely right. Yes, ma'am.
So, my name is Sarah Eastburn. I'm for Aries Energy and Tennessee Clean Water Network. And so, I manage their social media websites. And I was listening to a webinar about 5 months ago by Vivid Solar. They were talking about setting up your branding online. So they were saying that you don't want to be like a dinner guest. You're sitting at your table, and all you do is talk about yourself the entire time. And so they recommended something that has been insanely successful to me with all the different brands that I'm working with, and that's to do I need to come up with a name for this, but it's the 30-30-30-10 method. I'm not familiar with that. But so for each one of my brands, what I do is I look at the market, who we're trying to target, what they're interested in, and how it relates to our brand. So, for example, with the solar company that I work with, a big part of our population is young men who are between the ages of 17 and 54 who are very tech-oriented. So 30% of my posts on Facebook are going towards technology-related materials related to solar and how we can use that material to focus back. And then 30% is focusing on getting a free quote through Aries Energy. And then 30% is going to be focused on solar news. And then 10% is going to be a little bit of fun, memes, and graphics to keep my content interesting for people when I come up. I only post once a day for each brand on Facebook. If I post more than that, people believe me. But Twitter I go crazy on. And I just follow that method on every single one of my brands. And on my Twitter, for Aries, we've over tripled our following in the last 3 months. So,
Have you done any paid tweets?
no, I haven't.
So good for you. It's worked out organically.
Yeah, so that's something that's really worked for me. I hope it works for y'all.
That is awesome. Sarah, thanks for sharing that. That reminds me of kind of a category, similar thing, 80-20 or whatever, but like stock and flow posts where, you know, the stock posts are maybe, you know, predicated on your business and what's going on in the flow, or like you say, your fun memes or whatever's fun, whatever's current, whatever's happening that you can tap into. That's great. What else, y'all? Because you know I'll call on you sooner or later. Yes, ma'am.
So, my name is Nancy Barber, and we have Hunter Valley Barber Beer Truck in White Coral, but we tend to get a lot of companies that do free online profiles for us without us knowing, like in the event world with Wedding Wire and event websites and all that. What's the best way to manage all those that you don't even know about? Like, we Google ourselves quite often to make sure that nobody set something up. And they're not, we don't pay for any of them, but I don't want a bogus. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and are they reaching out to you after the fact to try to get you to pay?
Like 6 months later, they want us to give them $10,000, but a lot of beer.
I have two thoughts, and then I want to hear what the Geek Squad says about this. But do you? I say that with love. Yeah. Do you have a Wikipedia? Have you created that yourself?
No.
Okay, I think you should do that to kind of take control of, you know, your online brand a little bit. But I don't know. I want to hear what you say, and Chris, I want to hear what you say about these people creating, you know, unsolicited profiles and then wanting you to pay afterwards. Do you have thoughts?
Is it like, what, is it just like on random websites and not?
They're all like event and wedding related, but the companies tend to create profiles for us and then ask us to advertise, like a spotlight vendor, this, that, and the other, but it's always after the fact. So basically they take everything off of our website and create something for us, usually with a bogus picture, and then we have to sit there and manage it. That's our task this afternoon, is to go home and Google ourselves.
Online directory, so like there's so many of them out there that would.
Is it directing traffic to your website? I mean, it could be beneficial as far as a link if it directs to your website.
There's an option, but then you have to go in and upgrade your storefront. Like on the Knot, we have to upgrade your storefront, so then it costs me money. But I can't get them to delete what we already have, so it's kind of, does that make sense?
Well, I don't know if there's like a technological solution, because this is like a behavioral problem that people. I mean, I agree with the sentiment of like, making sure that whatever is official you're putting out, like it's as easy for people to find as possible. But people do that, and I think users, to a certain extent, can tell when something's kind of been like just put up there. So like, I run across stuff like that all the time. Where I'm like, oh, this isn't a real person or a real company. This is somebody. So I feel like it's pretty commonplace.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, definitely black hat, tactics, and, I would tend to ignore it. And, there's the Barbara Streisand effect. Do you all know what that term refers to? This is years ago, and a negative story apparently came out about Barbara Streisand, and people didn't see it, but she saw it, so she kept, agitating to get it taken down, and all that did was raise its prominence, in search. So to me, it's a little bit a case of that, unless they are putting, erroneous information out there, and then I would think you would have legal recourse.
There's nothing wrong.
Right.
Just have to go in and make sure it's all right all the time. It's time consuming, so.
What if you ignored it?
Well, we have ignored it this whole day, but because there's crappy pictures and we're trying to make it brand across everything, so.
Chris, what do you think about that?
There are some services you can pay for that aren't that expensive, that I don't know if it would necessarily remedy your problem.
This is Chris Martin, Fletcher Marketing PR.
But honestly, for the most part, I feel like it's almost like I would just probably leave it alone. Like, unless there's something that's just erroneous or something, I feel like if anything, they're just doing a favor.
Okay.
By giving you some backlinks to your website and, adding a discoverability element to you, as long as everything is correct. And, maybe you don't like the pictures, but I would be less concerned about that.
Yeah, I agree. I was thinking about, again, my client, the Lucas Center, and we have an official YouTube channel, but there are also just some, janky videos of Dr. Lucas out there that we didn't post, that we don't know where they came from, but we can't make them go away. And I'm like you, it makes me crazy. I do not want them there, but I have to just kind of, yes, let it go and be serene, because I can't do anything about it. So.
I mean, your other option is to get into the extortion and pay.
Don't do that. Don't do that. Yeah.
Do not negotiate with directory terrorists.
Exactly. Other thoughts, questions, stories? Yes, Lori?
Can you go into a little more depth on the multimedia campaign that you work with Fletcher on for radio or for Pet Day? And just kind of talk about the different channels you used and how you promoted that.
Yeah. Basically, this was a campaign to promote certain items that they wanted to drive people to buy, impulse purchases for pets over the holidays. And a really important feature of this, which is not necessarily part of every MNR, but we made it part of this one, was the digital gift guide. And that was a flip book that was created and graphic. Again, you can link through and you can look Naughty and Nice Pet Guide, and you'll see all this online. It was a flip book that highlighted the gifts that PetSafe had chosen to highlight and then hyperlinked back to where you could purchase those online. So it was interesting because it was actually, there were conversion metrics there as well. So we could track and see what traffic went back and actually generated purchases. And the company that Fletcher uses for the MNR is Multiview, which is a division of PR Newswire. And so, all of us have used PR Newswire over the years to send out your basic text release, and then it got to be where you can pay a little extra and add an image, and maybe you can put some hyperlinks. But this is just so much better because Multiview will give you, and I'm sure there are other, organizations that do that, but I trust PR Newswire. I've worked with them for years, and I know you guys have as well. Multiview actually creates a little website where all these assets live. So it's templated, and so rather than having to do the design work and the back-end work, you simply plug in your assets, which, if you've already got those created for your campaign, then this is a place where they can live. And, you can track the traffic. It's all in one spot. They actually send it out for US 1 distribution, so there's a national distribution along with it. And the pricing is based on how many multimedia assets you include. I think there's one price if there's 6, another price if they're 10. So, again, I don't mind getting that granular with you guys because I love US Newswire, and that's the only firm I would use to disseminate news releases. And I think the MNR, in this era of visual storytelling, if you're a visual brand and you've got great, videos, Harrison, what's his name? Forbes, is that right? I can't see that far. So they have this pet trainer guy who's kind of their new brand ambassador. So the hook here was he was going to come up with tips specific to the holidays. So naughty and nice pets. How do you travel with pets? What about Christmas ornaments? What about having family members around and strangers in the house? So it gave it a hook to market and make it relevant. Again, tapping into that cultural relevancy of the holidays and what's going on. So, again, the benefit is you end up having access to that. It lives on. It's still out there, rather than when you drop a release and that's the end of it. This little website is still out there, and there are also packages you can get where you update the content 4 times a year. So the template exists. Say there's a spring campaign you're doing and you want to change out the assets but have the same template, you could use it. So for SEO, it's awesome. What else would you guys add to that? The whole campaign.
One thing that I really like.
This is Claudette Saria, also of Fletcher Marketing PR.
And I used to be Laura's student.
And I heart Claudette.
What I really loved about the flip book was the feature where you could share the products as well.
There you go.
That was really cool because, if you have a pet and you want your family members to buy little Kiki something.
Kiki La Pomme.
You guys are on Instagram. If it's not a toy or something, or it has a behavioral problem and you want that to be corrected, then you can share that with her grandma or her granddad and see if they can get it for her for Christmas.
Yeah, the social sharing elements, again, it gets back to that user-generated content and getting people to be part of telling your story for you. So then it's not about promoting PetSafe, it's about, oh, look what we can get for Kiki, So, does that help?
Yeah, what vehicles did they use? Did they use everything? Did they buy advertising on Twitter? Did they do organic posts? Like, what did they do
to promote that? In addition to the US 1 news, wire distribution, what else did they do, y'all?
Well, we were going to promote it via social media, like the Twitter and stuff, but I think what we did with this was we just promoted it with the PR Newswire and distributed it nationally.
Yeah, we were not responsible for that element of the campaign.
Yeah, that you bring up a good question. Some of these things, it's all about execution, and it's interesting. I have a lot of clients tell me. One very savvy client recently said, "Well, if I pay you for this plan, and we agree to these metrics, but the execution isn't there, what happens?" I said, "Well, then I can't be held accountable for the metrics." Often we can put together the best laid plans for clients, but if they aren't able to execute against it, so yes, ideally it should have had organic circ on all the social nets, and I would have put a paid buy behind it, would have done email blasts. I don't know if all that played out due to resources and timing, but that would be the way to do it upright. Yes, Danica.
That was my question about how it was distributed. So let me see if you can clarify this for me. So it's basically a coded kind of digital catalog experience that lives under a web link. And how was that link given to people, just in the news release, or was it emailed to their subscriber base, or for them to, like, how do people know to go to it, basically?
Well, that gets back to Lori's question about how it was promoted. They wouldn't have known. I mean, the newsrooms know because, there was, like 4,000, media distribution lists. So it came to emails to individual reporters, and then it also, went on the wire to get picked up. But individuals wouldn't have known unless you included this in an e-blast, unless you put it on your website and drove traffic to it through your social nets. So yeah, I mean, there have to be steps to it to really give it, to get full legs out of it. Yeah.
I like that you mentioned the tips. I think that's something brands can do that's really cool, where you ask yourself, how can I benefit for free the people that I want to reach out to? And I think that's a powerful thing. I mean, the purpose-driven marketing, it falls into that category, but it doesn't have to be as extreme as getting, $10,000.
Right.
It's like you can have that be a regular part of your branding, and it don't have to be as big. So like in our case, doing little tech tips online for free videos, that's a no-brainer. For some brands it might be more difficult, but I think asking yourself, what value do we have in here? It creates this. It just looks good.
Yeah.
And then it helps, people be reminded of your brand without you having to ask for something.
Right. No, I think that's absolutely right. You're creating, value-added content. That's the whole thing behind inbound marketing, right? Is, you're putting stuff out there that people actually need and want. You're not, inundating them with useless information. Mac Bauer can certainly tell you I'd benefit from tech tips. So, Lisa, what are you up to at TVA?
Well, we're all about telling our brand story right now, and we did a lot of surveys and research last year to determine that our story is service, because 80 whatever years ago, that's what you did, was created to do, was serve people in the valley and make life better. So if you go to any of our Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're everywhere, you'll see these little testimonials about someone who's worked at TVA or been affected by something that TVA has done in a positive way. Where it's just telling the stories of the people and what it means in the valley to them to be associated with TVA.
Yeah.
So when you talked about digital storytelling here, that was one of the things that really resonated with me, because we're using a lot of different ways to do that.
And you mentioned employees, and of course for TVA, a huge organization, that there are a lot of people to tap into, but even for small companies, if you can get your employees to tell what they love about your corporate culture, or why they love working there, or why they believe in the product, not something where you coerce them or even incentivize them, because that takes away the legitimacy of that user-generated content. But don't just think about your social community and your customers, think about the people who work in your organization, because that makes a really big difference. I know when I was at Tombras, a lot of the marketing Tombras does is to attract high caliber talent from the advertising field nationwide and even globally, and it's all about corporate culture. Those people can live anywhere they want and work wherever they want, so they have to have a reason to want to come to Knoxville and want to associate with Tombras. And it was all about the stories about what it's like to work there and the creative collaboration and how awesome it is. So don't overlook that in your brand narrative. Yes.
I have a question. Melissa Callahan, I work at the Episcopal School of Knoxville, so we're a nonprofit, so we come from different, viewpoints in a business. So when we create content, and we've done a lot on our blog of videos with our teachers and with parents, telling the story of our school brand and why people should send their kids to our school, and it's great. We had all this content for a good about 6 to 8 months, and then I lost a little steam because I'm kind of a one-woman show, but part of my thing, I feel like sometimes we're telling the same story over and over again. So are there any suggestions as to, like, when you are a nonprofit and you are your message doesn't really change because you're not selling a new product, how do I keep my story fresh? How am I not repeating the same story over and over again?
Well, that's a great question. I know part of what you do, Melissa, is that weekly email, which, kudos, because as a former parent of ESK, I think that's really well done. And, you train people to anticipate it and look to it for content. I think it depends on who you're speaking to, because when you're speaking to your internal family, yes, they get what ESK is, but I think your content is always fresh, because there's always something different that the students are doing, or a different initiative, or the time of year, you know what I mean? So it may feel stale to you. I don't think it comes off that way, and when you're marketing outside your community, people are not instantly thinking top of mind about your brand. I did some consulting for Web School recently, and they've just launched, 5th grade academy and a new preschool, and we looked at how to get the word out in the community as well as to their internal community. So I don't know. I tend to think you're doing a better job than you think you are. Yeah, I don't know. Does anyone else have tips from a nonprofit perspective? And I don't think it's just nonprofits that struggle with that. But parents never get tired of seeing pictures of their kids. Trust me.
Well, and I would use a bunch of testimonials as well, and use different voices through that, from the parents to the kids to the teachers, whatever, have them tell their experience. That'll keep it really fresh.
It will, and I don't think that's something you've done, or at least not in the time I've been following. Have you had the teachers tell their stories? I mean, have you had Mr. B talk about why he chose to teach there and why he loves it? I mean, that could be a neat series. You've got some...
A few of those, we've had a few, but I think we did more of those on the blog than we did with our Facebook and Twitter. Right now we don't have Instagram, but I think maybe if we use some of those on different platforms, that they might get a little bit more.
They would. There's a lot about, to keep in mind about repurposing content. You create all this great content and don't just let it be a one-off. Now, don't duplicate it. I hate the idea of putting the same content identically out on multiple channels, but I know you don't want more work because you're busy, but Instagram would be ideal for you guys. Yeah.
I'm in that, that rock and hard place between going too wide or, going narrow and deep and then too wide and not. So we're trying to figure out exactly how to make it all be good content without spreading ourselves too thin.
Yeah, you don't want the quality to suffer. And I should know this, but I don't. Do you all have a LinkedIn corporate page? A company page?
We don't do anything on it. It exists, but we don't do much with it.
I think that's an underutilized asset for you, because when you're looking at donors and parents and sponsors, that's a great channel. And I know you're thinking, well, that's not really our audience, but it is.
Yeah.
It's all your working parents, and it's people who would support your school and underwrite initiatives and be sponsors. So, and also it's very inexpensive to pay to promote that content. I suggested that to Web as well. So.
Thank you.
What else? Other questions? Comments? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Christine. I'm with Asset Planning Corporation. And being financial advisors is a very heavily regulated industry. So up until recently, no testimonials were allowed at all. Now I think that you can have testimonials so long as you have no control over what people say about you.
Right. Then you can incentivize them in any way.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So how do we get our tribe to talk about us and start conversations that promote us without it being a testimonial?
Without it being a testimonial, tell me.
So maybe they're not giving us 5 stars and telling us why, but is there a creative way to have them talking about us online, social media, without it crossing that very thin line?
It's interesting because when you were talking, I was thinking about Team Health and other healthcare organizations who are so heavily regulated and have HIPAA restrictions, and we're so afraid of social media for the longest time, like we can't even do anything because of that. But you can. What comes to mind right away for me would be talk about the issue's not about yourself. Like, there's about to be an interest rate increase, right? People are talking about, and if you get establish your advisors as thought leaders and subject matter experts in their field, so if they start talking about, here's what we see about the interest rate increase and how you should position yourself, the real estate market has rebounded, that's a whole nother topic. So I would take those meaty topics around your industry and have your internal people talk about them, and I think the conversation will come. If you promote that, I think people will start to look to you for, guidance, and people will have questions, and you can kind of start a conversation. I mean, on a tactical and real granular level, I mean, it could get down to, Twitter chats, it could be, podcasts. I mean, there are things you could do, or even when you have those, don't you have those, you invite people to come and hear about an issue. Like I know I was invited to something by a financial planner about helping elderly people and planning for elder care. When you have people speak, are you recording it? Are you periscoping it so that then you can circulate that content via your social nets later? I think that would help start conversations around your brand without actually trying to get testimonials. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Great.
Anybody else have good ideas for her?
I have a question for you about your regulations. So, it sounds like you're not allowed to say, we helped John Smith III who lives at 123 Lane, with whatever, but are you allowed to say, we had a construction worker come in with 3 kids, and we helped him save his budget? Like, if you're not specific, but you're general, and you pick pieces of who people are as part of the story, are you allowed to talk about how you help them?
I think we can have general case studies like that, so long as it's very general. The testimonial is the issue of someone else saying what we did for them and why we're great or whatever.
But remember that need that people have to be seen, heard, and understood. And to Danica's point, if you tell the generic story about, the single mom and how you helped her manage her money, then she might chime in and say, yeah, that was me, and what you all did really helped me out a lot, So I like that. You're good. She's a good one. All right, what else, y'all? I don't want to bore you. Are there cupcakes? Did anyone bring? No. Or cats? Cats or cupcakes? No.
Laura, talk a little more about repurposing your different media for different channels.
Yeah.
Everybody may not. We shot a 3D commercial that was pretty long and looked at how to repurpose a lot of that for different segments on the different channels.
That's a great point. So basically, you're going to want to go shorter on Twitter. You can go longer on your website. Maybe it's in between on Facebook. So you kind of need to know your audience and which channels they're on, and then you need to sort of tweak the message. So even if you're showing the same content, maybe it's not all pieces of it. Maybe it's repackaged. Maybe there's more of the text and the call to action of what you want them to get out of it. I think that's a great idea to take that video. Did you piece it? Did you make it in different links?
Yeah.
Did you create B-roll as well? And
B-roll, and then we had...
See, Dave, you can speak to this.
...spots to where, it was cohesive.
Yeah. Well, Dave, what do you say about it? We have a video guru in our midst. And I'm just curious because I know you do this for clients, and so...
I mean, any professional production company, we shoot a lot. 90% of it is only cutting from the floor, so you might as well do something with it, And I think that's what kind of behooves you with bringing out, and making the spin on a big shoot, is that you will, start a library of footage, and it'll get cheaper the next time because you already have that shot already there for your purposes,
And can't you harvest stills from the video as well and then use those?
I mean, people motion can sometimes mess that up. Now that we're going into the 4K, you get more clarity, and that's going to get better and better. I mean, the stills aren't perfect. They're not like a photo shoot, but they're generally good enough for your purposes. And I mean, there's just so many ways to cut up the same. I mean, what we do for certain ones, we cut it into 4,000 different purposes, and it's really kind of paid off for them to invest it.
Do you have a benchmark for video linked for different channels, or do you leave that up to your clients?
Generally, it's based on client need. But yeah, some of the same stuff from Sugar Ones has gone in, anything from a 30-second commercial to Instagram, Facebook stuff to pre-roll on YouTube ads to I think we definitely pulled stills for various other purposes. I think some of it's at the airport now, at the baggage claim. I mean,
it's everywhere.
And it's all,
It's that cohesive brand narrative again.
Yeah.
And I was reading something the other day, Lisa, that surprised me. It was talking about YouTube videos, because you kind of think, 3 minutes used to kind of be somehow this artificial barrier in my mind. It was saying videos as long as 5 minutes don't necessarily lose viewership. It depends on what it is and who your audience is. So, it's a really good point.
Well, the other point is, this is going to sound really old school because we're talking social visual, but even B-roll, like we were talking about, that have been left on the cutting room floor, you never know when one of the TV stations is going to need B-roll. You can provide them for free, and if you get your logo in there somewhere in that B-roll that says, it came from us, or someone has a logo on their jacket or whatever, kudos, that's great, you know.
It absolutely is, and that reminds me again about the MNR, the multimedia news release. You're really providing the newsrooms with all these assets that they can use. So again, even if they weren't going to write a story about PetSafe, if they pick up the holiday pet tips from Harrison Forbes, the pet trainer, you know, it's almost the B-roll in effect. It's like, oh, we can run that in a segment. We need that because that's timely and seasonal. It wasn't to promote PetSafe, but yet, you know, you get that added little benefit. So. All right, guys, how are we on time? Lori, you want more? You want less? Or you still eating cookies? You done? What's up?
We have more questions. Got time for a few more?
Okay. More questions? Yes? No?
Sure.
Danica.
Okay.
I love what you're doing in NASCAR, by the way. I think it's...
Oh, yes. If only when I get pulled over for speeding, I have to pay the ticket. Okay, so in terms of authentic photos, in the industry that my company is in, that's difficult. Like, we don't currently have a photographer employed that goes around to our facilities to take pictures of the different, you know, physical therapy, the residents, and that sort of stuff. So a lot of times we're having to rely on stock photos, which bothers me.
Yeah, I hate stock photography.
So do I.
Sorry, did I say that out loud?
So I guess my question is to the room at large, what sources, because some websites actually do a good job of making their stock photos not look like stock photos. So what resources are you guys using in that regard? If you can think of the names of the websites.
I mean, I use Shutterstock.
Okay.
Any other good stock photography sources?
Use iStock.
iStock?
Actually, lately, we've been using a lot of free stock photo sites, which you kind of get what you pay for, but that way you don't have to be spending hundreds of dollars a week on stock photography just for like a blog post or something.
I think it's...
Freelance photographers come in.
There you go.
Several photos. Like, we partner with a photographer that comes in before the photographers for our events. And we don't pay them, and they either leave their logo on the bottom or we tag them in everything that we use the posts for. So basically it's free. They come out every weekend and take pictures of everything.
That's really smart. Just to piggyback on what she was saying, just as you have all the B-roll from a video shoot, I think it can behoove you to just schedule a photo shoot, and because you're going to have so much stuff that you can use later on, you know, and if you get the rights to it or you're going to give people their attribution, that's almost more beneficial than stock photography. You know, if you know the type of imagery you're going to need around your brand, you know, which I would assume you do. So.
I'd be interested in your thoughts, Laura, with regard when John McCauley did the very first event for us. He talked about, you know, in video, people don't care if it's not high quality video anymore. And it actually probably conveys a more authentic voice if it's not high quality, because you feel like you're really seeing what the person's doing or what have you. Do you feel that same way about photography?
I do. I absolutely do. I think things that, you know, the era of the stilted, you know, glam shot pose, you know, it doesn't resonate. It doesn't feel real, and people are much more interested in something that you can take with your iPhone. It rings true. It feels authentic. I think it's in most cases more powerful than something that's too slick or professional. Not to take anything away from professional photographers. Yes.
It's actually something I face all the time because I'm the social person, but we have on staff Patricia Nash, you know, professional photographers. And so our graphic designer looks at everything I post on social and is like, let me tell you a little bit about these shadows. You know, and what I try to get him to understand, especially when we're relatively successful in a certain demographic, but our goal is to
branch out.
Absolutely. I mean, if your goal is to be a Michael Kors and you're in this, you know, 45 to 55 female with a $2 million income, you know, you've got to kind of broaden what it is that you do. And I feel like that's what my job is. So I'll grab a bag, run down, take a picture, put it up on, and then my graphics guy really gets unhappy with me. But I think that when you're looking at, especially younger people, they look at what I do versus a paid photo shoot with a paid model, you know, to me that it's good. I mean, it's good. You have to have your product shots. But it's really nice to have, I think, something that's a little bit more relaxed and maybe not perfect and looks more like street style. Somebody just ran down and took that kind of.
I think you're absolutely right, and you see brands with the huge budgets who are making it look like it was that. And local store, Obligado, you know, that store, they do a great job on Instagram of just having them standing there, and you can even see the phone, and they're taking it of their own. I mean, I like that. And I'm your audience, except not with the $2 million income, but I mean, I love your beautiful, gauzy, fabulous, glamorous shots, but I think you're right. The real girl on the street shots could be part of your strategy.
I've been kind of discouraged, so I haven't done anything lately, so I've got to get back into doing that. But he's making me really feel like, you know, I'm not speaking the brand voice. I'm not at the right level.
You know what I would say to him?
Photographer, and he's told the other photographer that she needs to start taking my pictures, but I see significant engagement with everything that I post.
I was going to say, data is your friend. I mean, I would look at the posts and track the engagement and also do some research out there. I mean, there's lots of, secondary research. Go find articles and find statistics that demonstrate what you're talking about, because I think you're spot on, you know. So there was a hand over here.
Is next week. They're non-credit course. They're having a social media photography class. 3 hours. We all registered.
Oh, my stars, that sounds great.
Great picture with your iPhone.
That's a great, yeah, and great can still be amateur-ish, but well done.
Social media photography. We'll see. There's one.
I think I need to send my intern to that.
And I'll chime in on that too, shut me up, but seriously, even at TBA, we have reps all over the seven-state valley. We tell them, we have a seminar, how to take good pictures with your phone, how to take good video with your phone. And it was wild, one of the dams was spilling, that means they opened the gates, and it's a fabulous picture. And one of our guys just went out there with his iPhone, shot some footage, we threw it on Facebook, and a guy from NBC News was just
wow.
on Facebook.
There's your case study.
And by golly, it was in the big weather segment for that evening when we got all the attribution. It was just an iPhone video, but it didn't have to be great, it just had to show cool stuff.
And that's more authentic, you know.
It was authentic, and it was fast.
Yeah. That's a great story. What were you going to say?
Well, I was just going to say too, like I do the same kind of thing. Whereas
What do you do?
My name's Savannah, and I'm the marketing director at Pure Lux Salon Spa.
Oh, yeah.
So there wasn't anyone before me for like 6 months, and before that, the person used a lot of stock stuff, just because, you know, we have Allergan, Skin Medica, OPI, all that kind of stuff.
They furnish you with those assets, yeah.
They were using the images that our reps provide us. And then I just started going in, and instead of, you know, the stock image of the OPI, I would actually take it in the store. And I've gotten more traffic and engagement on that than the person prior to me that was just using the stuff provided. And even our Skin Medica rep even told me that my stuff looks better than what their corporate stuff puts out, because she said it's more engaging and it looks more real. So.
And you got the metrics to back that up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good for you.
That wasn't like a shoot my horn thing, that was like a trying to encourage you kind of.
No, that was good.
Not backlash, but kind of like, well, you know, these things are provided to us already, and I'm like, I get that, and sometimes I do use it, but I think it's good to have a mix and not just always the Jupiter lady holding an apple.
Yeah.
Always the Jupiter lady with the apple.
Yeah, and not to criticize Allergan and Juvederm Lady with the Apple, or even, you know, Glossy Photographer Man, but they are not your audience, you know, and they kind of have, it's a conflict of interest, because, I mean, he benefits by, I know he wants control over the brand, he wants quality control, but he also benefits by all the photography being generated exclusively through him, but he's not your audience. So it's one of those things, you know, you can't read the label from inside the bottle. You know, you got to get out and see what actually is resonating. So, yes. All right. Is that it, guys? Thank you for your time, and I've enjoyed it. So, holler at me. You can reach me on Twitter, Yogini Gangsta, or via email.